For some reason, I feel like I recognize this mini tower. It almost reminds me of something I remember having seen on YouTube around the same time Will Be a Tower was released in JTO. It's funny too, because I had blocked out all memory of something similar up until now, and honestly I'm not even sure why this nostalgia struck, because the mini tower was made this year. Nostalgia aside, it does look good. It uses the same structural support gimmick that the previous tower submitted, floor had used. But I know this support structuring is used generally to allow for extra gamma play space on the first floor. It is allowed, but it is a bit cheap in my opinion. Also, the colors do look good. Because this is a mini tower, this section can remain rather brief. The gamma play in the tower is for the most part rather simple, mostly consisting of wraparounds, truss flicks, and the random sparkled client object to spice things up ever so slightly. For a mini tower, it does have good variety in terms of gamma play compared to most others. The average mini tower that isn't kept within a neat project likely doesn't use client objects much at all, much less using multiple different COS. There was one random instance where I did somehow end up getting lost once because for some reason I didn't think about going back on top of the timed section the first time around. It's not really confusing, but for some reason it didn't click in for me. Also, the structuring of this part risks making some things in terms of progression slightly weird here, because there's multiple ways you could go here. None of them are wrong, albeit, but it can mess with the flow of the tower in my opinion. I did not expect this jump pad to immediately launch me up upon touching it either. I expected it to act like a regular jump booster that would just increase your jump power here. Also, unexpectedness can make this zipline slightly RNG. I'm also noticing a bunch of stud cutoffs primarily on the later floors, which probably were more prevalent throughout the earlier parts, but I didn't pay much attention to which, spoiler alert, it happened to only be this part. These do not look great in my opinion, which can weaken the design score of the mini tower personally, but the general structuring of the tower is good. This mini tower does have a few things going for it. First of all, aside from one or two parts already mentioned, the tower as a whole flows well. But that's not really hard for something a minute long. Its minimalist style is also appealing from a distance, and it uses client objects pretty well, even if nothing in the tower is really new to the table. The main factor that brings the design score for this mini tower down, for me, is the amount of stud cutoffs. It weakens how the tower feels, especially when parts are misaligned to the general structures like shown here. Sure, it's not always a bad thing, but it's really hard to make look good. Also, the aforementioned client object RNG can be slightly annoying. This suggestion is pretty minor, but for the dyslexic folk like myself, maybe add simple indication on this part, or add a wall here that covers the other possible path. I don't know if it's really possible, but considering it's a mini tower, it can be rather vague. Regarding the zipline RNG that I had mentioned on this part, my suggestion does not involve replacing any obstacles, but maybe extending the catch zones that are supposed to exist on the target platform. This way, if you hit the side of the zipline instead of the dead center, it won't be too drastic. Also, fix the stud cutoffs on the last part. It weakens the aesthetic of the tower as a whole, personally, and it's not that hard to fix.